Getting peed on by the commander-in-chief, making friends with the president of Iran, and longing for a leisurely drive. Most people are aware of the protective duties Secret Service agents are responsible for, but they may be surprised to find out about some lesser-known aspects of the job. The average person probably pictures the Secret Service as suit-clad agents glaring at crowds through their dark sunglasses, ready to give their lives to protect the commander-in-chief.
Why do you want to be in the Secret Service?
I can't think of a more important job than protecting the president.
The reality, at least at the beginning of an agent's career, is more likely to include a desk and computer monitor. According to Forbes, even those who are dead set on getting involved with protective details must put in 2 years on the investigation side of things. Speaking to Smithsonian Magazine in 2007, Agent Julia Pearson noted that even field agents have to do their time, with about half of their work involving investigation rather than protection. Sometimes that can be fairly active and will involve serving warrants and tracking down criminals. On other occasions, however, that also involves tracking internet-based crimes like counterfeiting and issues with electronic devices. In the past, much has been made of the rumor that there is an official food taster for the president. However, as former White House chef Walter Scheib told The Washingtonian, there is no poison tester who arrives early and samples the president's food. But Scheib claimed that there are definitely security protocols concerning just how a president's food is secured and prepared, a duty that presumably falls at least partially under the jurisdiction of the Secret Service. While food service staff at the White House are reportedly already cleared and don't have an agent hanging around them, that might not be the case when the president travels to less secure locations, like on foreign state visits or even to a local restaurant. Secret Service agents do indeed go in ahead of the first couple and other notables to ensure that a restaurant is secure, which likely means a close inspection of the kitchen and its contents. If a Secret Service agent lands the most serious job in the service, protecting the President of the United States, they may find that they're scanning for threats while undertaking a new physical activity. That shouldn't be too much of an obstacle from a fitness standpoint, as agents are expected to maintain a high level of physical fitness. But it's not as if those standards necessarily include galloping about the countryside with Ronald Reagan. Only that's just what happened to agents who accompanied President Reagan to his private ranch near Santa Barbara, Rancho del Cielo. Some had a difficult time keeping up with Reagan, who was an avid horse rider. One unfortunate agent even suffered a broken arm after falling from the saddle. Thankfully, Agent John Barletta had horse riding experience and became Reagan's frequent companion on the president's rides in the countryside. When Bill Clinton was running for office in 1992, agents were obliged to go on regular public jogs where Clinton often spontaneously met with members of the public. It wasn't just that they had to run 3 miles or so that made things tricky. Instead, it was the fact that agents also had to carry around radios and sidearms while keeping pace. George W. Bush proved to be an even faster runner, but at least he kept his runs to more easily controlled non-public areas, such as at the private Camp David retreat. For anyone who opens up the right compartment in the presidential limo, they may be in for a surprise at the sight of blood bags. There's a good reason they need to tote around spare blood, however. The heavily armored presidential limo, popularly known as the Beast, includes not just medical equipment, but a fridge stocked with bags of blood that match the president's blood type. In case of an emergency, that blood, so carefully watched over by Secret Service agents, could mean the difference between life or death for the president. Currently, it's unclear if that supply of blood has ever been used, but the medical knowledge of Secret Service agents has definitely saved the president's life on at least one occasion. When President Reagan was shot by would-be assassin John Hinckley Jr. in 1981, agents quickly bundled the president into his limo and sped off towards the White House. According to the book Standing Next to History, An Agent's Life Inside the Secret Service, Agent Jerry Parr noticed the president had, quote, deep red foamy blood coming from his mouth.
And he said, I think I've cut the inside of my mouth. And I said, let me look. And it was pretty profuse.
Parr quickly deduced that this was due to a serious lung injury and redirected the limo to a nearby hospital, where Reagan went into emergency surgery to remove a bullet from his lung. Without Parr's training and quick reactions, it's possible that Reagan would have died. The Secret Service was founded in 1865 to fight counterfeiters and only took on protective work after President William McKinley was assassinated in 1901. Over the years, the types of people watched over by agents have grown to include the vice president, presidential candidates, former presidents, and their immediate family. Adult children of sitting presidents, and even recently out-of-office ones, can also get this level of protection, including the college-aged children of both George W. Bush and Barack Obama shortly after their fathers' terms ended. Secret Service agents may also escort foreign heads of state and their spouses while they're in the U.S. This included Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in 2010, who reportedly got so close to his Secret Service detail that he rather warmly asked about their children and called an agent by his first name. That's all the more surprising, given Ahmadinejad's oftentimes prickly stance towards the U.S. and his championing of Iran's nuclear program, a development that set the U.S. and its allies on edge. Still, when Ahmadinejad visited New York City to address the United Nations, he was provided with a Secret Service detail. It would hardly be a good look for the U.S. if any foreign head of state were to be harmed while in the country, so agents may be tasked with protecting someone whose point of view and even personality may rankle their personal sensibilities. Part of being a Secret Service agent on the president's protective detail means that you must ensure the president is almost never left alone. According to Mental Floss, that's led to some intimate moments, such as when an agent accompanied President Reagan to his colonoscopy. Sometimes agents have also had to accompany the president to the bathroom. If they didn't, occasionally confusion would reign. As George Rush explained in Confessions of an Ex-Secret Service Agent, President Jimmy Carter once accidentally hit a panic button thinking it was a toilet flusher. He was therefore very surprised when Agent Marty Vinkner rushed into the bathroom while Carter was still zipping up.
As the 39th President of the United States, I witnessed firsthand the importance of a Secret Service mission.
Perhaps that embarrassing incident wasn't as bad as that endured by Secret Service agents who sometimes shielded President Lyndon B. Johnson when he insisted on using the bathroom outdoors. According to the book Commander-in-Chief, one agent found that his pant leg was growing wet as Johnson was relieving himself, and he quickly informed the president that he was urinating on his leg. Johnson reportedly smiled and told him, "I know I am. That's my prerogative." However, as former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow told Vanity Fair, agents do their best to give the president privacy, at least in highly controlled private spaces such as the residential areas of the White House. A Secret Service agent on a protective detail can't allow themselves to be distracted, yet they don't necessarily get breaks, and they may not even get the chance to eat or sleep as they would with regular jobs. As former Secret Service agent Dan Emmett told the Wall Street Journal in 2014, agents may be expected to skip multiple meals in a row, stay up for 24 hours, and work a grueling series of shifts that sometimes requires them to stay awake into the wee hours of the morning before switching to a completely different shift soon after.
It's not a 9-to-5 job.
While it's clear that Secret Service agents who are on the intense assignment of protective duty can and often do deal with it well enough at the time, Emmett noted that many burn out sometime around the 5-year mark. Speaking to The Hill, he said that while out on routine travel, agents have to deal with things like sleep deprivation, jet lag, and malnourishment. He went on to add that there are times in which responsible agents will take the opportunity to recover, saying, "You can't really be at the peak of your game all the time or you burn out. You have to understand when it's time to ramp it up and when it's permissible to back down a little bit." In the modern era, it turns out that video is a handy part of the Secret Service agent's toolkit. However, it's not as if an agent must constantly record what the president is doing. Instead, as author Ronald Kessler told Mental Floss, Secret Service agents are more likely to film relatively large public events involving presidential security, such as motorcades. If something happens, as when someone in Florida threw an object at Donald Trump's procession of vehicles in 2017, agents can review the footage and come out of it with new security lessons. They can also work to apprehend attackers, as happened with the 2017 motorcade incident. Footage can be a valuable training tool for a long time after it's been captured as well. Kessler noted that agents still review the infamous Zapruder film, footage that graphically captured the moment of JFK's 1963 assassination in Dallas. The moments before and after Kennedy's shooting still hold valuable lessons for how Secret Service agents can react to such a dire situation, and especially how to prevent it in the first place. Movies like Clint Eastwood's 1993 film In the Line of Fire may show Secret Service agents as macho heroes, willing to put their very bodies on the line to protect the president. However, the reality is that sometimes they also have to consider the softer side of things when on protective detail. In other words, they have to consider one of the most key things about the office, the president's image. Take the now well-known case of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's disability. The commonly accepted notion that Roosevelt's mobility issues were hidden by the press is often overstated. The reality is that reporters covering his time in office did sometimes mention the president's usage of a wheelchair and other mobility aids, such as canes and leg braces. It is true, however, that FDR and his staff generally wanted to convince America he could walk just fine, so they weren't exactly open with all information about his disability, especially when it came to publishing images of the president using those mobility aids. Secret Service agents reportedly sometimes ripped recording equipment from people's hands, destroying the film then and there. But even the Secret Service couldn't get it all, as the occasional footage made its way to unsympathetic members of the press corps. While spouses and grown children might get some leeway, the general rule is that the president, vice president, and former holders of those roles are no longer allowed to drive on public roads. It's not a law, exactly, but the Secret Service and other security officials strongly discourage presidents from sitting in the driver's seat. Instead, an agent with training in defensive driving tactics is meant to chauffeur them around, even on private roads. Protectees are typically accompanied by an agent. That rule is one that agents often enforce even after a president is out of office. The Former President's Act, passed in 1958, currently provides lifetime protection for former U.S. heads of state, both to keep them safe and to keep their knowledge of state secrets and the inner workings of the government in the right hands. This protection, both during and after the presidency, means that many office holders have only fleeting experiences in the driver's seat, even after the White House is in their rearview mirror. Thus, you have USA Today reporting President Obama fondly recalling the time he took a Chevy Volt for a gentle spin around the White House grounds, though anxious agents closed gates between him and public roads.